Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broaden our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I am here with Jason.
Hey, everyone.
How you doing, my man?
Doing well. About yourself?
Limping to that finish line.
Real life got you down?
Real life got me down. A lot going on. Been busy at work.
Fuck all that. Let's talk about movies.
Oh, yeah. It's my release.
I see you are dressed appropriately for the movie we're talking about.
Donned my Nightmare on Elm Street t-shirt because we are wrapping up our series on movies about movies with Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yes, and we were being overseen by my signed poster from the original.
Yes. And I'm lucky because I'm sitting on the side of the table where I get to stare at it the whole time.
You get to see it,
so, yeah. It's very, very enchanting.
It's a great poster. I like it.
Yeah, and this is 1994, and as the title suggests, is directed by the Wes Craven.
Yes.
Who we have somehow avoided talking about too much up to this point.
Yeah.
It's by accident.
Surprising.
Yeah,
Right.
It happens.
Not by design.
We do try to stray from the super mainstream stuff, so this is a little slight departure, but it's all good.
Yeah, it's a movie worth talking about.
Mm-hmm. Especially with our ongoing 90s debate we've had the past little bit.
Yes.
But
this has not changed my mind about the 90s.
Oh, no. But first, we're going to do all our usual stuff. We're going to talk about what we've been watching. I have a shout-out.
Okay.
So, I think by the time this episode drops, yes, there will be another Jacked Up Review Show episode that features one of us.
Yay!
You can listen to an episode of me chatting with Cam about the different Blu-ray media companies and labels. Your Arrow, your Synapse, your Vinegar Syndrome, all that good stuff.
So he probably cut it down from like 8 hours to 2 or something, right?
Oh man, I could have gone for forever if he really wanted to, but yeah, he's got those the set times we got to try to keep as we can. It's a little dated. I think we recorded it a while ago, so I think because I gave some shout outs to like some more obscure ones,
right?
And it's actually since we recorded it to now, there's other ones I would shout out to give more love to that are like newer. But it's the name of the game,
that's what happens,
baby.
Man.
You know how it is.
You never know when things are gonna fall.
But yeah, if you're a collector, you like collecting movies, or you're interested in getting into it, go give that a listen. Show the Jacked Up Review Show some love. We love Cam. We love everything he's doing.
Yeah,
they have all kinds of stuff going on over there. So
good stuff. It's crazy.
Go give that a listen. I'll put it in the show notes. Otherwise, what have you been watching?
Oh, okay. Well, I watched a couple things I want to talk about.
Okay.
I watched a documentary called King on Screen.
Okay.
I think this came out last year. But basically it is purportedly about...
Purportedly.
Well,
okay.
It's about Stephen King adaptations in the film, right? So
sure.
They kind of start with Carrie and go through some of the bigger ones.
Good topic.
I mean, there have been so many. It's hard to cover all of them. But
speaking of that, I saw that he's stopping the what's the thing where he licensed out his stuff to people for really cheap?
Oh, like $1 or something.
Yeah, dollar baby or whatever.
Yeah.
They're stopping that.
Really, I wonder why.
I don't know.
Interesting. I
think maybe
someone's not making enough money along the way,
or probably I think it was someone that's managed that whole part. Like can't do it anymore, or they're retiring, or I really didn't care to look deep enough, but I saw that and I was like, oh,
yeah, that's sad. So yeah, it's in theory, it's good. The problem with this documentary is that it barely touches on anything. Like it hits some of the high points. It spends way too much time on like Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile because those are the big, artistically valid, popular ones that everyone knows. And
sure,
they are good movies. I'm not saying they're not.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
But it's like they barely talk about The Mist. They barely talk about anything kind of more interesting. And they only have good things to say about any of the movies.
Okay.
It's a very positive. Like, okay, so Mick Garris is one of the top.
I was about to say, it's like an hour devoted to Mick Garris because...
Not that much, but I mean, they spend way too much time on that Shining TV movie.
Oh, that's garbage, dude.
It is garbage. I'm sorry. But there's no one there to say... This isn't very good, and I guess they want to be nice. They're celebrating King.
Well, the thing is like, it's any director. I mean, we got into that with Why Don't You Play in Hell? They had the quote, it's like you go long enough, you start making crap type thing, So like, yeah, that TV miniseries, I think it's terrible. You clearly think it's not very good too, but like, Mick Garris has done some killer Stephen King adaptations.
He has,
So.
and he's done some. He did Critters 2, and I will forever be in his
Yeah.
debt for Critters 2.
He could have done nothing else, and that would solidify him in our hearts.
Yeah. So I mean, unless you're just like a King completist, you can probably skip this. It's not going to tell you anything new. It's not going to be that interesting.
So it's not like a speaking of Elm Street, like a Never Sleep Again.
Oh God, no.
Kind of
See, and that's what this should have been like 6 hours.
Yeah.
And it could have covered almost everything. The best parts are probably Mike Flanagan.
He's kind of the guy now.
He's probably the best. Probably between him and Frank Darabont are the best Stephen King adapters. So that after watching this, it finally made me go watch Dr. Sleep.
Oh.
Because for some reason, I have not watched it, which is weird because I love Mike Flanagan.
I never have either.
I love the original Shining. But for some reason, I didn't watch it. So now I have, and I should have watched it earlier. It's really good. It's really very good.
I guess I'll have to watch it now.
Yeah, I think you should. It does a really good job of paying homage to Kubrick's version without giving like any spoilers or anything. There are actors recast.
You mean I think as Stephen King put it, the car without the motor in it?
Yeah, right. Some actors are recast sparingly to play like Jack Torrance and Wendy and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's done perfectly because they're not like trying to imitate those performances. They're not trying to look just like them, but it's like close enough that it doesn't feel like a different character. And the actors do a really good job of approaching that.
It's not a freaky grinning Harold Ramis.
Right. Yeah, they didn't do some stupid CG crap. They just recast it, you know. And it's a great scene between grown-up Danny and Jack. So they're at the bar when Danny finally gets back to the Overlook, and Jack is now the ghost, serving drinks and stuff like that.
The bartender, yeah.
It's a great scene. It's really well done. It's a 2.5 hour running time, which usually I'm no. But this movie kind of needs it. I haven't read the book. I haven't read King since the 90s, honestly. But it feels like the right length. And all the actors are really good. Ewan McGregor, I kept expecting him to, because, he has The Shining, and sometimes it's almost like the Force.
Oh,
I kept expecting him to whip out a lightsaber or something.
I mean, do enough cocaine, and I'm sure that's where the story goes, right?
Right. So if you, like me, for some reason had not watched Dr. Sleep, go watch it. And I had recently rewatched The Shining. So it was kind of fun going directly into this from that. So
Neato.
I recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah. How about you, man? What you been watching?
Well, I got to talk about a few things. Some I'm going to shoot through here quick. So the day we're recording this, Netflix's live-action Yu Yu Hakusho series has debuted.
Okay.
Now, of course, this is interesting because it's in the wake of the One Piece live-action. So some might say we're going into like this weird renaissance of like anime live-action adaptations. I'm going to say maybe not the Yu Yu Hakusho one. I got to be honest, one of my favorite animes of all time, still to this day. Live-action is bad, dude. Like, oof.
Is it? I'm not familiar with this one.
It's got a cool vibe to it, man, because it's like it's this kid Yusuke, and he's kind of like your typical like high school delinquent punk, and he's got a heart of gold though, like underneath his tough exterior, and he sacrifices himself one day to save a little kid that's playing with a soccer ball from getting ran over with a car, dude driving crazy down the road,
Sure.
and he dies. But because of that one act of kindness, the spirit world, it's a very like Asian concept of like an afterlife where they have like the Oni and stuff. But kind of like one of the people there decides to give him a second chance at life if he can prove himself worthy. And in doing so, he becomes a spirit detective. And he's kind of tasked with dealing with demons that escape into the human world or spirits that don't want to move on or things like that.
Okay.
And then that escalates into your typical shonen anime thing of big shirts off, fist fighting, brawling,
Sure.
save the day.
Okay.
Super basic premise, super fun. It really rides on like the characters are so good and so like their interactions and their development and how they change as the story goes. And where this live action fumbles is it is ultra rushed. Like if you see people saying that the One Piece live action is rushed, this is like maybe quadruple speed. In the span of 5 50-minute episodes, they cover like the whole first season and a big chunk of a subplot from the second season of the anime, which is like we're getting into like 50 some episodes at that point. So
Needed more time to breathe, huh?
travesties. A lot of the characters feel like not on par, not right, just like mischaracterized, I would say. Way too rushed. They cut out whole complete story arcs that are like, to me, I would consider them essential because it's like the buildup of their characters.
Right.
And like there's a core crew of 4 that he ends up with. It's like him. It's originally his rival from another gang and they become friends. And then 2 demons from the spirit world that they like capture early on. And then they kind of get reformed and join the team to help him. And they just have this great like, they're all enemies originally, but then turn allies by happenstance. And they get this cool like dynamic to them. And it's just not there, man. So big fail on that.
You can skip that then.
I would say skip it. See if you like it, I guess. If you've never seen it at all, though, and you have any interest from just the trailer of the thing, go check out the anime, because the anime is incredible. Cool. Holds up even to this day. Next thing I want to touch on, just to throw this out there, because why not? I'll be very brief on this. I watched a Hallmark movie. Tiffany surprised me with this, because I had known about this. Bruce Campbell has done some Hallmark movies as of late.
Yeah.
Like you do. Make a few bucks, why not?
Hey.
So I watched from 2022, My Southern Family Christmas. It's a very by-the-numbers Hallmark thing. You've got a young woman who is an aspiring writer for like a travel magazine, and she's estranged from her father. He kind of left when she was little, and they never reconnected, and she gets assigned this writing thing for the magazine because their big Christmas special issue, and she goes to Georgia to do this whole thing about like their version, like the Cajun version of Santa Claus with its own mythos and stuff. And then wouldn't you know it, that leads her to finding her father, who is played by Bruce Campbell. And so she gets to like reconnect with him and see what's up with him without revealing who she is, because she's just there as like a reporter.
Oh, okay.
And they go
Well,
through.
it's a good thing he's not playing Ash, because he probably would have been hitting on her.
And they go through all the beats of like, there's like a very hunky boy who's the town record keeper, and he just magically falls in love with her and is trying to help her. And you get the all is lost moment where she wants to like tell her dad, that's okay, I'm your daughter that we've been estranged from, but she's like, oh, maybe like his life's good now and I shouldn't be in it because it'll complicate it, so I should just run away and leave everything. And then it's got the happy ending where they all reveal it and they're happy and they're a family and blah, blah, blah.
When did the Deadites attack?
Never. Oh. Yeah, it does feel like it could be some weird like pseudo sequel where like shit calmed down and Ash just went and settled down, changed his name. But it's harmless. If you need a Christmas movie, it's maybe a better one you could reach for just because it's got Bruce Campbell in there. And
he makes everything better.
It is very heartwarming. Like he does bring the emotion on the whole, like his character has a lot of regrets about the way he was like first as a father.
He's an underrated actor. I've always said
he can
that.
bring the emotion, I think, and you get to see him pretend to do a Cajun accent, which is super fun.
All right. Hopefully it's better than Wilford Brimley's in Hard Target.
Whatever, it's harmless. And then last thing to shoot through here, I've been creeping into more of that Arrow Shaw Brothers Volume 2 box set.
Cool.
I said I was going to finish that this year. I have not. I have failed you.
Well, it's quite long.
I shall eviscerate myself upon this table.
That's the only honorable thing to do.
So I'm going to rocket fire through some of these. So Return to the 36th Chamber, the follow-up to the original one that was very awesome. Didn't care for it. It was super goofy, no stakes.
Yeah.
They kind of just tried to make it a comedy. Was not amused. The follow-up to that, the third one, Disciples of the 36th Chamber. I like this one a little better. It's still like it kind of tried to combine the prior two, the one that was very good and serious, and then the one that's completely goofy.
It's hard to do kung fu comedy, right?
And so it's just middling. I didn't care for it. However, then I braved a third one. And this, speaking of comedy and done right, I checked out from 1979, Mad Monkey Kung Fu.
That's a great title.
Which was fucking ridiculous, fucking awesome. Definitely a must-watch if you are into kung fu, martial arts movies, Shaw Brothers stuff.
I'm pretty sure that's streaming on the Arrow.
It may be since they have the rights to it. But yeah, it's just like it's this brother-sister duo. They do this whole stage play thing with martial arts about the Monkey King, that whole mythos. A crime lord falls in love with the sister, wants to get her away from the brother so he can have her all to himself. And he tricks the brother into getting drunk and then accusing him of causing chaos and raping his wife. They kind of stage it together. And so in the end, to spare him being killed, the sister agrees to be the gang lord's like concubine. And then also they maim the brother's hands so he can never use his deadly martial arts ever again.
Oh, no.
And then we get a time skip, and he's like this miser who's a merchant now, just kind of scraping by, and he has this little like dancing act he does with a pet monkey. And then he meets a young orphan street punk named Monkey, because he acts like one, and they kind of cross paths and end up teaming up together, and he teaches him his monkey fist style so they can eventually bring down the criminals plaguing their city, which in a big loop around turn out to be the servants of that original crime lord at the start.
Dun, dun, dun.
And it's got all the stuff you want. It's got the long training segment. It's got the like initial fight, and then they go away and come back. Where it's good though is like the choreography is fucking on point on this one, like crazy good. Where they have the monkey theme for everything. There's tons of like acrobatics and flips, and the final battle is like the younger guy has been trained up now and he's ready, but then the main dude comes too to support him. And so they do this like duo fighting in tandem thing where they'll like spin around one another and flip over one another. And it is like fucking amazing fight choreography.
Cool.
I was super impressed.
I'll check this one out.
So yes, give that one a watch, and I'll have to go into overtime into the new year to finish this set. But
Nice. I have faith in you.
sure. I'm glad someone does. All right, so today we are talking about Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994. The to-date, I guess, final actual Nightmare on Elm Street film, unless you want to count the remake.
You don't count Freddy vs. Jason?
Oh, true, yeah. I always forget that. But didn't we establish earlier that that's more of a Friday the 13th film?
It feels more like one.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we'll say the last solo outing
Yeah.
for Freddy.
Yeah. Yeah, 94. Oh my God. I think I mentioned this before, but that was the year I graduated. And one of the things that strikes me, because this came out on the 10-year anniversary of the first one. And 10 years doesn't seem like such a long time now, but it was like an eternity back then.
Dude, I still think the 80s is like 10 years ago. And then people remind me how far it actually is, and I just get fucking depressed.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And it's so weird how many movies came out and how Freddy evolved in just 10 years. Because he went from, surprise horror hit, and it was a serious, dark, low-budget movie, to, he was... Freddy was as big as MTV,
Right.
He was huge. He was a pop culture phenomena by the time the fourth one came around. And then he was a joke just 2 movies later with Freddy's Dead. And then this comes out and people were like, what? I remember it was a very confusing, weird journey. But I did go see this in the theater.
Wow.
And, it's not one I revisited very often. I think I may have seen it in total maybe twice in my life. So it was interesting going back to revisit it.
Yeah, I don't think I saw this when it came out. I was probably a little too young to go see it in theaters, but probably just in the course of when you started doing like, let's go through all the slashers, I eventually got to it. And I remember initially I loved it. I thought it was like the best sequel of all the set.
You were young and stupid, weren't you?
And then go back to it, a few years later, and I'm like, I don't know about it now. And that's kind of the story of my life with this film is I'll every few years go back to it, and sometimes I love it more, and then sometimes I don't like it that much at all. And
Well, there's really a lot to like.
there
It
is.
sounds like we're being negative from the get-go, but there's a lot to like in this movie.
This is like a 5-star film trapped in... It's wearing like clothing of a lesser film.
Yeah.
That sometimes like you get a peek at the what's under there and it's great, and then other times you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we'll maybe unpack that as we go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
do you have a synopsis, or would you like me to hit you with one?
Oh, you do it, man. Hit me.
It's nearing the 10th anniversary of the film A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is hilarious.
We discovered
We
that.
just said. Yeah. And one of the stars, Heather Langenkamp, is being scared by a voice on a phone, sounding very similar to the film's villain, Freddy Krueger. When Heather realizes that Freddy has now entered the real world, the only way to defeat him is to become Nancy Thompson once again.
A very meta premise.
Yes.
For the time, it was pretty out there. You know, it was outside the box.
Especially for horror, I would say.
Yes. And it's interesting that this, and we'll talk more about this later, I'm sure, but this predates Scream.
Right.
It's obviously Wes Craven's kind of dry run for that.
Yeah, here's the kernel that then blossomed into that.
Well, yeah.
So what genre is this?
This is horror, man.
Straight up.
Straight up horror. IMDb says it's fantasy horror mystery.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's a horror film.
Falls in the slasher category as well. Mm-hmm. And I think
supernatural slasher.
Oh, yeah, true.
I guess if you have to get specific, which we do.
He's not just a guy running around.
Yeah. He's actually something more than we've ever seen before. Freddy's a whole different thing in this.
Even more than what he was one film ago.
Well, let's get into it.
And I think, too, just to end up on the genre thing, like we should put meta horror as well.
Sure.
Which, as you brought up, this
is
like
postmodern supernatural slasher horror.
Post-horror, math horror.
So we begin with a visual reference to the beginning of the original Elm Street film. That classic opening. Yes. Someone who kind of looks like Freddy, looks like he's building this sort of robotic knife hand thing.
And it looks gnarly.
Yeah, it does look gnarly. It's a cool design. It's like a fleshy, mechanical, kind of bio-engineered looking thing.
Yeah, it's like if Cronenberg came up with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's like flesh and metal fused together.
Right. So then the guy, who we think is Freddy, right, chops off of his own hand to replace it with the robotic one.
Yeah.
But here we find out that this is just a movie being directed by Wes Craven himself.
Haha, the magic of filmmaking. They have fooled us.
And yeah, it's like Wes Craven playing himself, directing. And, you know, I actually like that little, it's minor, but I love the idea of him cutting off his hand and replacing it with this robotic claw thing.
Yeah.
That's freaking cool.
It's hardcore, man.
Heather Langenkamp is there on set because she's starring in the movie.
Yeah, they're making a new Nightmare.
They're making a new Nightmare. And she's there with her son, Dylan.
Played by Miko Hughes.
Who was already kind of a little bit of horror royalty.
Yeah, speaking of Stephen King earlier.
Yeah, he played Gage in Pet Sematary. And she's also there with her husband, who is the special effects artist. His name is Chase.
Which, interestingly, I'll just go ahead and bring this up now.
Do it.
Her actual husband is a special effects artist.
That's right.
And they asked him to be in the film, and he was kind of like, no one wants to see me in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
You should just find someone else.
Exactly. What was his name? I'm trying to find
David Leroy Anderson.
There we go. Okay. Yep. So it's kind of cool how Wes was taking details of her life and intertwining them in this movie.
Yeah, because that's essential to the makeup of this film, I think.
It is. So Chase is showing his kid the robot glove and everything, and it kind of starts moving on its own. Like there's like a radio interference or something, and it's malfunctioning.
It nicks him a little bit.
Yeah. And then it kind of comes to life, and it's like starting to clatter around like thing all over the table.
Like spider crawls with the blades.
Yeah. And it starts killing fuckers.
It just starts fucking eviscerating people.
There's these two special effects techs, and it like claws one of them in the throat, and the other one gets it in the chest, I believe.
It's cool, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But it's just a dream.
All a dream.
2 fake out beginnings already.
Double fake out.
Yep. Heather wakes up, and there's an earthquake shaking her house.
Which we learned that there's been a lot of earthquakes lately.
Yes.
Going on.
Which creepily coincided with real earthquake that hit at the time that they were filming. Like a big one.
It's almost as if even the production itself was channeling something.
Ooh. So they get a lot of production value out of this. Later on, we'll see like a lot of damage from the actual earthquake. And it's like, hey, perfect. Let's see.
Oh, but the neat thing too is that morning, as they're kind of taking stock of things, Chase has a cut exactly on his finger where it happened in the dream,
Right.
and it kind of gives Heather a pause,
Yeah.
but she doesn't really say anything about it.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, it probably happened when the glass broke, the frame fell,
Yeah.
during the earthquake." She's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds right."
But yeah, so we're taking stock of their things. Heather's kind of just looking after Dylan mostly. She's not doing a ton of like film at the moment. Chase has his special effects stuff going on. And we learned that Heather's kind of been going through a rough patch lately because she has this stalker that keeps calling her,
She does.
pretending to be Freddy, and just saying shit to her and just creeping her out. Mm-hmm. Which, in another moment of Wes being like fucking brilliant madman, apparently Heather actually had a stalker in real life
Yep.
that haunted her for a while.
And amusingly enough, it was not a Freddy fan. It was a fan of the sitcom Just the 10 of Us
Wow.
that Heather Langenkamp was in, along with 2 other Elm Street actresses. He was pissed that the show got canceled
Huh.
and started stalking Heather.
It's amazing. Like it's her fault.
Yeah, yeah. So it wasn't some Freddy obsessive fucker. It was some sitcom obsessed fucker.
But you can just see that he had to have probably sat down with her and been like, hey, can we like weave
Right.
this?
Is it
into
okay to use this? Yeah. That also reminds me of Adrienne King and her
yeah.
stalker, which is even a scarier story. It's terrifying. Yeah, so Dylan, he's like having his gross looking oatmeal or whatever it is. But he's kind of made a face that looks like Freddy in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just more little ominous tick marks to think about.
Yep. So Chase, he's going to go away for a couple of days to work on a commercial. Mm-hmm. And he leaves, and there's suddenly an aftershock from the earthquake, and these 4 cracks appear in the wall that look very much like a slash from Freddy's glove.
And I feel like it's supposed to give you that vibe of like you could think back to the old film and the part where he's like breaching through the wall.
Right.
Yeah, like it immediately like calls your mind back to those.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So she goes downstairs, and Dylan is watching the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the actual movie on the TV. And Heather like turns it off, and he's like entranced by it. Then he lets off this really obnoxious, loud scream.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. That is a good way.
And the phone rings, and yeah, it's her stalker, someone imitating Freddy's voice, harassing her. There's another aftershock, and the doorbell rings, freaking Heather out, but it's the babysitter, Julie, kind of like babysitter / her assistant, I guess.
Yeah, it seemed like a personal assistant.
Yeah.
Played by Tracy Middendorf.
Yes. So she's talking about the stalker and all this stuff. And in a deleted plot point, Julie was supposed to be the stalker.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, like she was obsessed with Heather and stuff like that. And she was the one who was stalking her.
Whoa. I guess it's a little too much for the film.
Yeah.
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 I can see why they cut that.
Mm-hmm. So this limo driver comes to pick up Heather. She's going to this interview.
Oh, and I love this limo driver because he's really sleazy.
He's kind of sleazy.
And it's supposed to like build on the stalker thing. Like, is it he the stalker maybe?
Yeah, right. The red herring. Yeah.
It almost becomes like Jelly-esque for a moment where you're like, is it him?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I even that written my maybe he's the stalker. And of course he recognizes from the movies, and he's talking about it.
I love that she just rolls the window up on him.
Yeah. He's like, they never should have killed Freddy. She's like, zzz.
I just want to say,
yeah,
I'll set this up here now. Heather's gorgeous in this.
She
film.
looks great. Yeah, she looks
amazing.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Needed to be said.
It
Okay.
needed to be said. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, she's going to shoot a little like TV thing on like a
So
talk show.
You just reminded me of her line from the first movie where she talks how she looks 20 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Because she had the gray hair and stuff like that. Like when you're like 17, 20 seems so old. But here, I guess she's probably pushing 30 by this time, I guess. Which, when I saw this movie, you think, yeah, that's kind of old. And now it's like, oh my God, she's young. She's young and gorgeous. It's so weird. Fuck time. Oh God.
Whoa.
Fuck my microphone.
It's just going to make it to the end of the year.
Okay, so she's being interviewed. And
yeah, it's like a talk show.
It's a talk show type thing, yeah. And there's a bunch of Freddy fans in the audience, people dressed up like him.
And she gets asked a question during this that I thought was interesting because the host wants to talk a little bit about kind of the idea that some people say, like, these films have an influence on people, that kind of like a negative impact on the people that watch them. The old kernel that was a very big discussion in the 90s, of course.
Yeah. It reminds me of that scene in Tenebrae.
Yeah.
When the critic is talking to the writer about, this makes people want to kill people. It's like, what? What are you talking about? But yeah, I'm sure Wes Craven dealt with enough of that shit.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
So they're like, we got a surprise for you. And Robert Englund as Freddy comes out. And man, he is working the crowd as only Robert Englund can.
Listen, I can't. I've seen the documentary Never Sleep Again. I don't know if they talked about this, but this scene could not have been scripted. I'm sure they just dressed him up and was like, "Go be Freddy."
Oh yeah,
and then he just like ad-libbed this whole scene.
Yeah, I'm sure he just slipped right into the character. But it's so cool seeing him in the original costume and makeup and everything, even if it's not really the character in the movie. It's still Robert Englund playing Freddy, and I'll take that any day of the week.
He's working the crowd. He comes over to Heather and is like waggling the knife blades.
And of course, he has to use that line, "You're all my children now." Fantastic. So after that, we see Robert Englund out of makeup.
Yeah, they're done with the shoot.
Looking all cool and dapper, looking like Robert Englund.
Nice, sleek, black outfit going on.
And they get a call from New Line offices that Bob Shea wants to talk to her.
Yep.
I love how meta this gets. Everyone's just playing themselves. It's great. So she goes to the offices, talks to Bob, and he wants her to be in the new Freddy movie.
Yep, he says we're going to bring him back.
Yep.
The fans have been clamoring for it.
Just like she was dreaming. They're making a new Freddy movie. He says Wes wants to make one.
He had a good idea.
Yeah, he says that Bob says that he hasn't heard from Wes in like 10 years, but was just called out of the blue. But he said he hadn't called him because Wes said he hadn't had a nightmare in like 10 years.
And that was kind of the fuel for the original film.
Yeah. And
which is both a true fact and then also a plot point.
So Heather's being kind of like, I don't know. I kind of left that part behind me. And he kind of spills the beans that her husband has been working on the glove, unbeknownst to her.
Yeah.
Just like in her dream.
Because he decided, if I'm getting Heather, I might as well hire him for the special effects.
Yeah.
Keep it all in the family there.
Yeah, and like his phone rings and he doesn't answer it. And she's like, "Are you afraid to answer the phone?" like suggesting perhaps he has a stalker or he's been having nightmares.
Yeah. Real ominous.
Always good to see Robert Shea. Oh, man. So Heather gets back home, and Dylan's screaming yet again. He does a lot of screaming in this movie.
He does, and it's...
Get ready for this.
Pretty fucking obnoxious. No offense to him.
It really is. Kids can't help it. Their screams and cries are supposed to get your attention. That's the whole point. It's the way same way a cat can be so annoying.
It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah. So she runs in. He's having some kind of a fit, and he's like spazzing out on the floor, and he's saying "Never sleep again." And he's got his stuffed dinosaur Rex there that's got four claw marks on him.
We get a little like info lore kind of about this, which is that he says that Rex protects him, keeps the bad man away.
Yep.
He puts him down at the bottom of his bed, and that repels the guy that's after him.
The old mean man, I think he calls him.
Yep. This is some old mean man. And we get this sweet moment where Heather's like, "Oh, well, we'll fix Rex. We'll patch him up and take care of him."
Yep. And Heather calls Chase. He's like, "Come home. Dylan's acting all weird and shit."
Yep.
And Chase is like, "Well, I can't. Chuck and Terry haven't come in. And those were the effects guys who got killed in Heather's dreams.
Yeah.
No one knows where they are."
More ominousness.
Yep. And like we see him working, he's got the new glove he's working on there.
And it's the glove from the dream.
Yeah, and it's the glove from the dream. And we're kind of panning away as she's talking to him. And she says, Dylan's acting like Freddy. So Chase leaves, and we pan back, and the glove is gone.
Yeah. Where'd that glove go?
I don't know. Maybe we'll find out.
Also, I love how he just like fucking leaves too.
Yeah, he's like, fuck it.
He's like, "I gotta go. Wife's in trouble." And they're like, "Well, what are we gonna?" He's like, "I gotta go."
Yeah, sorry. So meanwhile, Heather was reading Hansel and Gretel to Dylan.
And I like this because it's very much like a callback to the first film where you have the scene in the classroom where they're talking about the story and how that's kind of like a parallel to the plot. And then here, Hansel and Gretel becomes sort of a parallel to the plot as well.
Quite true. Heather doesn't want to finish it because it's too violent.
Yeah.
But Dylan has a good memory and kind of recites the rest. He says it's important to finish the story.
You always have to finish the story.
Mm-hmm. And he's showing Heather that Rex is sewed up. I think Julie had sewed Rex up.
Yeah, I think she helps and takes care of it.
And yeah, he's under the covers and he keeps the mean old man with claws away.
And kind of at this point, I don't think Heather's like jumped to the supernatural yet.
No.
It's more she just thinks he finally saw A Nightmare on Elm Street. Right. And to see his mother in the film, it's like traumatized him. And maybe there's those questions again about like, do these films impact the children?
Right.
That's kind of hanging over her a little bit.
So we see Chase driving home at night, trying to stay awake. And this always reminded me of the scene from part 5.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
I'm Dan in the truck.
Yeah.
One of the coolest fucking sequences in any Elm Street movie, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I know that 5's not the best sequel, but like, damn, that part is crazy.
It is crazy. And I actually like 5 quite a bit.
I do too.
It has its issues, but I love that sequence when he gets on the motorcycle and everything. God damn, that was cool. So he's trying to stay awake, and we get some kind of CG action going. The claws are coming up out of his seat. And he's kind of waking himself up again. But then the whole hand pops out and cuts him right in the chest, stabs him in the chest. And he crashes.
And then that seems to kind of mess with Dylan. It's almost like he senses that it happens or something.
Yeah. Back at their house, Heather's waking up. I think they're both having bad dreams.
Yeah.
Dylan said that Rex was fighting somebody, woke him up. Cops are at the door. We do get an overused dolly zoom here.
Yeah, we do. Tools of the trade, one might say.
So yeah, they tell her Chase is dead, and she wants to see his body, so she goes to the morgue.
And this is interesting too because they only show her the head at first, and she's like, I want to see the whole body.
Yeah, she goes there, and there's like bodies on gurneys like in the hallway. I mean, there's just bodies everywhere.
And it's funny because the guy's like, well, you're not going to see that in the casket. And she's like, no, I want to see the whole body.
Mm-hmm.
And she whips up the cloth to reveal the big claw marks all down his chest.
4 claw marks. And then she Ralphs. So then we get a nice funeral scene with some cameos from some of the actors.
Yes, we get some veterans of the franchise in there.
All too fleetingly, if you ask me. Let's see. So we have Tuesday Night, who took over the role of Kristen in part 4, which is probably the craziest Elm Street film.
I love it. It's almost my favorite sequel.
It's nuts. I saw that so many times when I was a teenager.
It's so watchable.
So many times. And we get Jason Garcia, who was in the original Elm Street.
And the real fun fact on this, you if you watch that documentary, you get this, but Wes wanted to get Johnny Depp. And it's this whole funny thing where he was like, oh, I'm not even going to call him because he's too big now. Why would he do this for me? Mm-hmm. And then after the fact, they interview him and he's like, I would have totally done it. I'm so appreciative for Wes for my role in that film and everything else. And it was the start of my career. And...
If he showed up for that commercial cameo thing in part 6, you think he would have showed up just for the funeral scene or something. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things. At that time, he was just like big star and like just like the height of everything. And now like it's more like we've seen who he is and like dude fucking carries his Jack Sparrow costume everywhere so he can go like visit a hospital and see kids and stuff. Like
yeah, I think he's a problematical person in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
but
for
also
sure.
I mean it's cool of him to go to the hospitals and do that shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Anyway,
very devoted to the films he's done. I guess is what I want to say.
Yes. So the wind starts blowing and the ground kind of shakes a bit and the coffin starts to tilt and Heather's like jumping down. And the coffin like opens up.
Pretty traumatic little event, yeah.
Yeah. And she sees Freddy's in there.
Oh, before this though, there's one other person there we should talk about.
Well, he shows up here in a second.
Oh yeah, more prominently. So sure, yeah, we'll carry on. Yeah, but Freddy's in the coffin.
Mm-hmm. And he's got Dylan, right? Or something like
Yeah,
that?
because Dylan was like near the casket and fell in.
So she runs down there to grab him, fight Freddy, get Dylan back. But then she's waking up. It was a dream. She had fallen and hit her head.
Yep.
But who's comforting her?
None other than the John Saxon.
John motherfucking Saxon.
Who, of course, played her father.
Mm-hmm. Who is now playing the ultimate role of John Saxon. But he says that you hit your head. You passed out for a minute. Now, I love seeing John Saxon in this. I've always been a huge John Saxon
He's so charming.
fan.
He's even great. For a second, he's on point.
So later that night, Heather wakes up to Dylan watching Elm Street again. Who keeps playing this movie?
Was it like an AMC Fear Fest going on right now or something?
Must be.
We've got Nightmare on Elm Street on the hour, every hour for this week.
So it looks like Dylan's kind of sleepwalking. Mm-hmm. And when Heather wakes him, he has another annoying loud scream. And he's doing the whole 1-2 Freddy's coming for you thing. Yep. She's like, did you get that from the movie? He says, no, he heard it from the bed. He said, like, little girl singing it and the mean old man he saw trying to get into our world.
Yeah.
And when we pan over to the TV was unplugged the entire time.
Ooh. But she ends up kind of confiding in John Saxon about what's been going on. Her fears about what's going on with this whole Freddy thing and the mysterious deaths and the earthquakes and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's like met him at a playground.
Yeah.
And Dylan's playing around. Now I love that in this, hyper reality, she confides in John Saxon. He is like a surrogate father figure in real life.
He is being the father figure that he played in the film.
Yeah, it's great.
But he suggests that she goes and gets like medical help. Mm-hmm. Because it's probably just like, stress or something. You just need to see a therapist. Get Dylan checked out, see if there's anything wrong with him.
Yeah. But meanwhile, Dylan is climbing to the very top of this like jungle gym thing.
Yeah. This is a pretty harrowing scene.
And he's like reaching out to the sky. And they finally notice him. And Heather runs over and he's falling. And she catches him. And Dylan has a line where he says like God wouldn't take him. Because earlier they were talking about how God took Chase.
Right.
But he said God wouldn't take Dylan.
Just sad.
That's some big shit for a little kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the next day, Heather is like out checking the mail, and we get like another visual reference, at least I think it is, to the first movie, because behind her is her white picket fence with like red roses.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like her home starts to morph into her home from the film.
Like there's some little hints here and there. Yeah.
It goes even further later, but yeah.
She gets another threatening letter. Looks like it has like an E on it. Like someone scribbled this big E out of like dirt or poop or something. I don't know.
Poop. Wow. Freddy's like, this'll show her.
I'm going to poop on this letter. Yeah. Take that, bitch. And so she puts it in the drawer with a bunch of others.
Yeah.
She's just keeping these. Keeping all the poop letters.
I mean, I think that's supposed to set up that this has been happening a lot.
Right.
So.
Right.
And I like it because it makes a like multi-play thing where it's like at this point you could still go, is it Freddy, or is this just a film about like she's become kind of mentally disturbed,
or is it someone
the trauma, or or is it actually a legit like stalker that's going to the extreme?
A combination of all three.
Yeah.
So she gives Robert Englund a call, and he's busy painting.
Again, probably not scripted.
Yeah.
They're like, do whatever you would do. Well, I'm going to paint.
So she's talking about how she's having dreams about Freddy. And it's kind of like, that's weird. And he's like, is it like me, Freddy? And she's like, no, this Freddy's different.
Yeah.
And he kind of finishes her sentence and he says, yeah, he's like darker, more evil. And she's like, well, how did you know that? And he's kind of staring off in the distance at this time. And he says that he was talking to Wes and asked him how the script's going. And Wes said that he's as far as Dylan reaching for God. Mm-hmm. Oh, a little hint here, a little breadcrumb.
Yeah. And
we pan over and see that he's painting Freddy.
Yep. And it's kind of this new look for Freddy.
Yeah. It's kind of like if Edvard Munch painted Freddy, kind of looking.
So naturally, she decides to go visit Wes. Talk to
sure.
him. That's the next breadcrumb in this trail.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we get some big lore drop here, right? From Wes.
I think that's a little bit later.
Oh yeah.
Actually, yeah. But there's a couple things that happen first.
Ooh, okay.
Because Heather has another dream sequence.
Oh yes.
With Dylan. He like drops something in the kitchen. He goes down to check on her. He's singing the Freddy song again, and he's got knives taped to his fingers.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Like how many kids did that? After the first Elm Street movies. And he attacks her, but it's just a dream. She wakes up. What's happening here? Okay, so the next morning, or it is morning, and the phone rings, and we get the whole thing with Freddy's tongue coming out.
Yeah, another good throwback.
Yeah, and Dylan's foaming at the mouth and freaking out.
So just kids being kids,
Sure, this happens all the time. So Heather takes him to the doctor, and the doctor's examining him, and she's talking about how horror films adversely affect children. And she's like, "You haven't let him watch any of your movies, have you, Mrs. Langenkamp?"
Yeah, I'm just gonna say this bitch has a real thing in her craw about horror films.
Yeah. She's a stand-in for all the MPAA people and shit like that,
and all the parent-teacher association action groups and stuff.
Yeah, she's thinking Dylan might have schizophrenia, and he's kind of not talking much. He's almost catatonic.
And doesn't she even suggest kind of has there been any abuse going on in the home and stuff too? It's
yeah. Do you keep any drugs in the home? That
yeah.
Kind of thing?
She makes some reaches.
Mm-hmm. But Heather's like, okay, he wants Rex to protect him, and she's talking about how it's not very far. She'll be right back because she's like, you see that freeway over there? Our home's right past that freeway.
Mm-hmm. And Julie's there to watch him in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we get another nice cameo here too, because the nurse brings
the whole
Dylan...
time you're thinking, if we've got Bob Shay, where's Lynn Shay?
Yep.
Especially because she was in the first film.
Mm-hmm. Dylan has to take some meds, and Lynn Shay's the nurse that brings him out.
Which is so funny that Bob got to be himself.
Yeah.
But then she plays a part.
Right. It's cool. We get to see Lynn Shay, so I'm happy with that.
Love Lynn Shay.
Yeah.
Any film is better for her inclusion.
She's great. So on the way there to get Rex, Heather's calling Robert again, but she gets a message saying that he's not at home, and they're going to be gone for some time.
Yeah.
He's just skipped town, man.
He's on the convention circuit.
Now this is when she goes to talk to Wes.
Yes, okay, yeah.
So he's at his swanky mansion up in the hills. Do you know the original idea in the script of himself, of Wes Craven? He was going to have had cut off his eyelids to stay awake.
Whoa.
And he was going to be feverishly writing the script in a van being driven around by Michael Berryman.
That's crazy.
That was the original concept.
Wow. That's a little much, I think.
Yeah. I think he thought it'd be more comfortable if I'm just at home.
No weird makeup prosthetics.
Right.
Sad for the lack of Michael Berryman in there.
Yeah, I know. Who Wes had worked with twice before, the Hills Have Eyes films.
Yep.
I think that's the only other Wes Craven movies he's
So that would have been a fun callback to his career.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, she's talking to Wes, and he's talking about what he's writing about in his nightmares. About an ancient entity that can only be captured in a story. And only trapped for a while.
It's basically this ancient supernatural entity that kind of feeds on people's fear and stuff like that, and like all good evil ancient beings tend to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
and as long as you're telling the story, it keeps the demon at bay.
Kind of through a story, you can trap it and keep it kind of locked in the story, and it won't be a problem.
But he says that Freddy is a real entity.
Yep.
And now that the movies are over, he's kind of free to roam.
Yeah, when they made Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare.
Yep.
Ending the story, released it to once again plague the world.
Yep.
And it has adopted the guise of Freddy Krueger since that was the story it had been woven into.
Right. Whereas in ages past, it could have been, a demon, it could have been Dracula, it could have been whatever.
But for now, it's Freddy, and keeping to the story it has been woven into, it's focusing on Heather because that's your final girl. That's the enemy.
And she's asking, like, what can stop him? And Wes says that there's always, like, a gatekeeper, someone that can keep him from entering the world. And it's you, Heather.
Yeah.
You know?
It's very almost like Buffy, the Vampire Slayer in a way.
You are the chosen one.
Yeah.
So at this point, he's standing by his word processor, and I like this sequence because he sees what he has typed, and it's their dialogue.
Yeah, it's their conversation.
Yeah, because he's asking her if she is brave enough to play Heather or Nancy one more time, and it's all typed out on the word processor. It's cool. So Heather's doing a little bit of research later on and finds out that sleep deprivation can lead to schizophrenic symptoms.
Yes.
So Dylan has just not been sleeping.
Obviously, because when he sleeps, this thing comes for him.
Yeah.
Because again, it's woven into the story of Freddy Krueger, so it's trying to follow those rules.
Indeed. And she also sees a news report about the 2 special effects guys that were found dead.
Yep. And their death kind of mysteriously mirrors how they died in the dream. That ties that up again as well.
We get another earthquake, and the lights go out, and she's kind of looking around, looking in the closet for something, and Freddy pops out.
Yeah.
This new Freddy. What do you think of the makeup?
I'm not in love with it.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's sort of like just sort of flesh separating from his skull, more or less. It has that same kind of biomechanical look that the hand does.
Much less the like burn victim sort of deal.
Yeah, it's more of a, I guess, demonic, for lack of a better word, kind of more generic monster. Almost like a Cenobite, kind of reminds me of a little bit.
I could see
with
that,
the flesh
yeah.
being pulled apart.
Maybe more of like a Hellraiser 3-1 where they got Goofity, had like the CD Cenobite.
Right. It's the Freddy Cenobite.
Here's your metal claw Cenobite. I will say though, fucking dig the trench coat. That's a cool look.
Trench coat's cool look. Yeah, I like that. I like that just fine. And we also didn't mention that his new glove, hand, whatever it is, has like a blade on a thumb as well.
Oh yeah, one extra blade.
Which apparently Robert Englund hated because he found that really awkward to do anything with.
That is true. Like, I don't know. When you think about it, the range of things you do with a hand, and that last one's also a long blade. It's
going to get in the way.
Yeah.
So they kind of have a tussle, and he attacks her and cuts her arm. And there's like another aftershock, and he disappears. But she wakes up, and she's cut. Her arm is cut.
Just like the movie.
Yeah. So she runs back to the hospital, and there's Julie there wanting to see Dylan.
She's trying to keep Dylan awake because didn't Heather call, or she told her, like, yeah, don't let him fall asleep.
Yeah, well, she has that line here shortly because she has to leave again.
Oh, yeah. Here's a criticism of this film. There's a lot of weird, like, coming and going.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth.
That doesn't need to happen.
Kind of unnecessary scenes. Yeah, I agree. But the doctor who hates horror films, Dr. Hefner is her name. She notices the cuts on Nancy's arm, Heather's arm.
Yep.
See, I'm doing it now. On Heather's arm, and asks what happened, while she's treating it. And Heather said, it was the earthquake. And she's like, what are you talking about? These wounds are fresh. The earthquake was like a week ago. It's like, no, it just happened. She's like, there wasn't any earthquake, you loony bitch.
Yeah.
And Hefner tells Heather that Dylan's been talking about a man in his dreams. And Heather even mentions like Freddy's name. And she's like, oh, the man from your movies. He has been watching your movies. This is what's done it. The negative effects of horror films on children. And I love this line because Heather comes back saying, every kid knows Freddy. He's like Santa Claus.
Yeah. Which is so true.
It really is. I mean, you cannot overestimate how popular Freddy was circa 88, 89. It was just insane. It was everywhere.
I mean, like, I was born in 86, so I didn't know about it right away, but I'm sure that I knew who Freddy Krueger was before I ever saw a single film.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. It's just like Dracula. I mean, how many younger people have ever seen the movie Dracula? But you know Dracula when you see him.
And you know the lines, too, like the iconic things that he says.
Right. So Dylan, he's asleep in this oxygen tent. Heather goes into the room, and she kind of begins to nod off. But Dylan wakes up, and he's talking like in kind of a Freddy voice, saying he's almost there. and he spits up this gob on Heather, very Exorcist style. Mm-hmm. So nurses come in and they're like strapping her down. Well, Dr. Hefner comes in, and suddenly she's got Freddy claws.
Yeah.
She goes to kill Dylan. But no, this is a dream. Heather wakes up.
Another fake out.
But Dylan's not there. He's gone for testing somewhere else. But Julie is with him. And we also see that Heather has a string of hair, gray hair, just like in the first movie.
Which still looks good.
Still looks great. Perfect. Love it. No notes. And she's running, trying to find Dylan. She's going to this restricted area. Another great callback here. She knocks down a nurse. And she's like, well, where's your pass?
Screw your pass.
Screw your pass. Love it.
So nice it had to happen twice.
Yep.
So this is maybe probably one of the most iconic scenes of the film.
Yeah, and this is the part where, because Heather has to leave again, and she says to Julie, don't let him fall asleep. Mm-hmm. You know, whatever happens, don't fall asleep. But yes, continue. Iconic how?
This is like the moment. This is like the money shot. This is like what you remember from this film, probably if you don't remember it very well, I would say.
Yes, which is also a problem for me.
So the nurses are wanting to give Dylan a sedative so he can sleep, because that's obviously what they think. Well, let's get him some actual sleep.
Right.
And then we can sort out how much of this is sleep deprivation and how much of this is like legit trauma that a child has gone through that we need to now report what's going on. And Julie kind of fights with them, tries to hold them off.
Yep.
But they do the old fake out, and
they have to be breaking some fucking laws.
Yeah,
here,
I know.
You know.
And while she's distracted with one, the other one sticks him.
Right.
And she desperately tries to keep him awake, but he nods off.
Yep.
And Freddy emerges into the hospital room.
Yep. He is like standing behind Julie.
And we get an amazing recreation of that first kill from
Tina's kill.
Yeah, Tina's kill from the original film.
Yep.
And wow, it's like crazy in this version.
It is. Okay, well, how do you feel about it?
I like it.
I have issues.
I think it's never going to match the original.
No.
Especially because I think like where this one's in this like clinical white room that's very bright.
Yeah.
That gives it a different like tone that's not quite the same.
Yep. And I'll go ahead and say it. That's one of my issues with this movie. It is shot so flat.
Yeah.
Everything is overlit. There's hardly ever any dark sequences.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say some might argue that that's intentional because it's the real world and it's not the movie world.
And others might argue that's intentional because it's faster and cheaper. I don't think there's any artistic merit to it.
I don't either, actually.
I
was just playing devil's advocate.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But yeah, he starts dragging Julie up, just like Tina was going up the walls and everything like that.
And eviscerates her, man.
Yeah.
And then Dylan starts sleepwalking and just bolts out of there.
Yep.
He's wanting to go home, and he knows how to get home because Heather told him.
Yeah, it's right across the freeway. She's like, oh, holy shit.
Which leads us to, I'm going to say, both one of the most intense scenes conceptually and also one of the worst scenes visually.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
What they were wanting to do was very difficult to do back then.
Very ambitious.
There's a lot of rear there's a lot of rear screen projection going on. But yeah, basically he's sleepwalking across the interstate.
Mm-hmm. And Heather's caught up at this point.
Right. And she even calls John Saxon and is like telling him what's going on. Like he's headed home. Can you go there? In case he gets there and meet him. But yeah, so he's trying to cross this road. So all these cars are like careening, getting out of the way. And Heather runs out there trying to catch him, and she's like ducking under a truck.
Yeah,
big semi truck, and yeah, the effects aren't the best.
Yeah, so conceptually, like you just imagine this: like your child is crossing the interstate, and you're trying to get to them. It's fucking horrifying. It's crazy.
You think Miko Hughes would have learned to stay out of the fucking road, but no, apparently not. And we even get like a giant Freddy up in the air, which reminds me of part 3 when he's the puppeteer. Mm-hmm. And he like has his claw and he scoops down and even lifts Dylan up at one point out of harm's way.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's like he needs Dylan because that's like his conduit.
Right.
Which made me think also of part 2 where he is possessed the guy and is trying to manifest through him.
Yep, and part 5.
Oh, yep.
Where he's possessing Alice's kid.
Yep.
Maybe some of this is intentional. I don't know.
Intentional, accidental.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
But God, the visuals here are terrible. I'm just going to...
It's not great.
Yeah, it
not
looks
great.
awful. I cringe every time I see it. Yeah.
But Dylan does make it across.
Yeah.
Heather gets to her house to find John Saxon and Dylan there. She's telling John that Freddy did it. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure.
And she calls him Dad at one point. Because he kind of gives her a look of like, why'd you call me that?
Isn't it the other way around?
Is it?
I think he calls her Nancy. Yeah. So he calls her Nancy. And yeah, he's asking, why are you calling me John?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because she's saying that Freddy did it. And he's like, honey, Freddy's dead. You know? And suddenly he's dressed like a cop. He's got like his revolver and everything. And he's his character from the first movie. And he gets into his car and it's got like, you know, the police light and everything. And Heather's wardrobe has changed. She's now like wearing pajamas and stuff. And she looks over and her house has become the house.
Fully the house.
Yeah, from A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is one of my favorite sequences. I love this part of the movie. I wish there was more of this.
Mm-hmm. This should have been some of the dream sequences, I think.
Yeah.
It's her like going back through the movie.
I love the idea of the movie overtaking reality and they're like becoming their characters and things like that.
Like I've always had this thought, really since the first time I saw it, like if there was a scene where she was like dreaming that she was at the morgue or somewhere and you had her husband like in the body bag, like echoing the school scene in the first film.
Tina, yeah. So John / Nancy's dad is driving off and she goes into Nancy's house.
Yeah.
And she's finding little sleeping pills that Dylan has left, like breadcrumbs, because they were talking about Hansel and Gretel earlier.
It's the callback, because one of the things he says is like, how do they know how to get home? And it was, they left a trail of breadcrumbs.
Right. My question is, why the fuck would they want to get home? Because their parents fucking tried to kill them. But anyway. So she's following the breadcrumbs to Dylan's room, and she finds Rex all tore up.
Yep.
So she starts taking the sleeping pills so she can fall asleep and go find Dylan.
It's a cool shot, too, of like the bottom of the bed is like a tunnel.
Yeah, she gets under his covers and stuff. And yeah, it just keeps going.
Yeah. Great visual.
Yeah.
This like whole part is like where you see the promise of like what this could have been, I think.
I agree. Yeah. Because now she's like, she falls out of this giant Freddy mouth, basically. Yeah. It's this used sculpture of Freddy, and she's falling out of his mouth into this kind of ancient ruins hellscape.
Yeah, it's like a hellscape because it feels very like Roman.
Yeah.
But there's like stuff burning for no reason. And
yeah.
It is that area we see in the opening too.
Yeah, there's like actual ruins like from different eras, like Etruscan looking stuff and like Roman, Greek.
Yeah, it's gnarly.
Yeah.
And yet at times also it still has that boiler room vibe to it a little bit. Because there's like random like burning areas.
Right. So Dylan shows up, but so does Freddy, who starts attacking her.
We get our big showdown.
Yeah, we get a fight scene. She's like stabbing him in the eye.
There's some good callbacks here too, because there's the one part where he has Dylan, and she's coming to save him, and then the ground becomes like jelly basically.
Yeah, she's going up the steps,
and it's like the stair scene.
Now this is a much better effect than the original stair scene.
Yes,
you could see like where the porridge was and everything. But also that just adds to the nightmare logic of it.
Yeah,
you know.
Why is it like this?
Yeah. And also you see Freddy's hand distend trying to reach Dylan, like his hands do when we first see him, and then he's walking through the alley.
This is God.
Yeah, classic. So like he grabs Dylan, he's trying to literally eat him, like his jaws distend like a freaking snake.
I think that's a cool visual too.
It is. Yep. But she comes up and stabs Freddy, and
they're near one of those furnaces.
Yeah, and he's kind of behind some bars and stuff, and his tongue distends and wraps around Heather.
It's pretty gnarly too.
Yeah, a lot of sexual imagery here too.
Yeah,
but and that's something that Wes Craven was talking about, how like Freddy was always sort of like, Even the line, "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy."
Yeah.
There was always this kind of sexual element.
And that
to
goes
it.
back to that original thing of was he a child killer
Yeah.
or a child predator
Right. Or both.
or both. Which is one of the few nods I'll give the remake that it actually tried to play with that a little bit, but
Yeah. Less said about that, the better. So yeah, like Dylan like stabs Freddy's tongue to the floor. He pulls it away. Freddy's locked in the furnace.
yeah, they shove him in there.
They shove him in the furnace and it starts cooking him. We get a very unfortunate morphing effect here.
Yes.
Well, Freddy's face turns into a very generic demon.
Yep. Which I guess it's to suggest this is the original entity.
Yeah. And his eyes like bulge and pop out.
I hate it almost as much as the fucking Dream Demons in Freddy's Dead.
It's as bad as that.
It's slightly better because it's not 3D.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
it's pretty bad.
It's still bad. The whole place starts to collapse. And
They're racing to find an exit.
yeah. So they
Well, to get into dream logic moments, like they dive in a pool of water
right.
and that just brings them out.
Yeah. So they're back in the real world in the bed.
Another earthquake has happened because their house is trashed.
Yeah, yeah. But she finds Wes Craven's script with a note on it, thanking her for having the guts to play Nancy one last time. Mm-hmm. And now Freddy's back where he belongs. Dylan asks, "Is that a story?" And asks her to read it to him, which she does.
Yep, she turns the page and starts reading, and she's literally reading the script of the first scene that we saw in the film.
Yep.
It kind of
The story must be told to keep Freddy at bay.
yes, it kind of bookends us back around.
And then we get some kind of unfortunate music at the end. It's got this kind of hip hop beat to it,
Yeah.
mixing in with the Elm Street theme. Didn't work for me.
It's all right.
It's very 90s.
It's very 90s, very mid. I'm gonna say,
Yeah,
as the kids say these days.
very mid.
Oh yeah, I'm a cool
Yeah,
podcaster.
you are, man. Wow. All right, so that's
the movie.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
You got any more fun bits of trivia and such?
I do actually have a bunch.
All right,
So
let's go back and forth. You hit me with something.
okay, let's buckle the fuck up for this.
I got some shit too.
So I guess the first thing to start is like Freddy, right? Because he's our villain. He's the one this is all about to a degree. Apparently, this depiction is much closer to what Wes Craven originally had in mind when he first came up with the idea. Less of the kind of jokey, comic-y side of things, more menacing.
Sure, it was supposed to be a return to the Dark Freddy.
Right.
Yeah.
However, in an interview in 2015, shortly before he died, which again, rest in peace.
Yeah,
Wes
R.I.P..
Craven. Miss him. He admitted that he regretted changing his appearance and said that when he thought about it more, it kind of just settled on if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why bother?
Hard agree. I think that's one of the detriments of this movie.
And he said that was why he always pushed to never change Ghostface's mask in the Scream films.
Okay, that's probably the smart choice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. 100%.
Very good, very good.
What do you got?
Okay, so Miko Yu's parents told Wes that we've got a trick that can make him cry on cue, but we don't like to do this, but we'll do it. And he's like, and Wes didn't know what it was. He's like, okay, if you think it, sure, you know. So their thing was his mom would go away for a while, like leave the set, and then his dad would tell him that her mom was dead,
Yeah.
that his mom was dead, to get him to start crying. Holy shit! That's a little extreme.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
In an interview, Wes said that they would like go out and buy him a Happy Meal after that.
Let's see. Oh, I've got the actual quote about that TV spot thing they do.
Yeah.
And that was like based on a real thing. So this is from Wes talking about it. He says, Robert Englund and I did an appearance together on a public television show in the San Francisco area. It was about whether these kinds of movies were bad for children or not. There were parents in the audience and they had brought their kids. When we came out, all the kids leaped to their feet and started chanting, Freddy, Freddy, Freddy. Mm-hmm. I remember looking from the show's host to the parents and back, and they all looked horrified.
Kids love monsters, man. That's just the way it is.
It excites the imagination.
Now, this I did not know, and it kind of shocked me. But the cinematographer of this movie was Mark Irwin.
Okay, sounds familiar.
He should. He was an early collaborator with David Cronenberg.
Oh.
He shot Videodrome, Scanners, The Dead Zone, The Fly.
That just makes this film sadder.
Yes. There is no way he was given what he should have gotten to make this movie. I don't think he was given the time. This has a very much kind of a 90s light and get away sensibility about it. So I was shocked it was a Mark Irwin film because he's an excellent cinematographer.
Cool. I actually didn't know that either. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you with a few little ones real quick. So, when the film starts, it just begins and just goes into it. They said they wanted no opening titles to blur the illusion of whether this is a film, a documentary, or something else.
That would be cool.
They didn't want it to have the conventional, just like, next next Nightmare on Elm Street, boom. There's that. There is the premise of the film, right? Freddy trying to invade the real world and haunting the actors that are working on a film. That's actually like a premise that they had pitched before. They pitched that for Dream Warriors back in the day, and their inspiration was the movie Return to Horror High.
Ah, yes.
But the studio rejected it at the time. They didn't think it was a very good idea, and because it was so close to Return to Horror High, they thought it wouldn't play very well. And then last little extra bit.
Oh, Return to Horror High?
Oh.
One of George Clooney's first films.
Oh.
He has a bit part in there.
So many big stars got their starts in 80s horror.
Oh, yeah.
The ending credits, when they're scrolling through, you'll notice that Robert Englund is credited as himself, but then Freddy Krueger is also credited as himself.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great throwback to like the old Universal monster films and stuff like that.
Yeah. Love it.
Nice. I'll hit you with a few real quick here. So Craven cites the Roman Polanski movie Repulsion as an inspiration.
I can see that, especially with how Heather's portrayed.
Yeah, and the cracking of the walls and stuff like that.
Fucking love that movie, too.
Yeah, it's a great, great movie. If you have not seen Repulsion, fucking watch it. Hefner, Dr. Hefner, was the name of someone at the MPAA that gave Craven all sorts of grief.
Oh, I knew it.
Both Miko and Wes had different Rex props in their homes.
Ooh. That's cool.
Yeah, they had kept that. I think Miko had the one with the red stitches.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Quick one. KNB did the effects.
Classic.
Yep. Can't go wrong with them.
Which, in general, most of the actual like gore effects, I think, are pretty good.
They're too few and far between for me, though.
Well,
this movie's
when we get into our final thoughts, I have some criticisms I'm going to lay down here.
All right,
that's definitely one of them.
Nice.
You got anything else?
I do. According to Robert Englund, this was his favorite of the Elm Street films.
I could see him saying that. This one has some kind of depth to it in a way.
Yeah, and he gets to play himself and a different Freddy, so he probably found it kind of fun and challenging. Pulp Fiction opened the same weekend as this.
Probably had something to do with the box office, I bet.
Yes, because it was made on an $8 million budget, which really wasn't a lot. But it only made about $20 million at the box office, making it the poorest performing of all the Elm Street films.
Which is sad that it did worse than Freddy's Dead. Because that movie is just hot garbage, yo.
It is.
Oh, man.
It really is. Okay, that's all my trivia.
Okay, I got a few more. The original title for this film was going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street 7, The Ascension.
It's a very weak title.
Apparently, old Bob Shea got gun-shy about it, and he thought if they put the 7 there, that people would be like, oh my god, another one after the last one.
Bob Shea's a smart man.
And he said, why don't we give it a different name? Why don't we throw Wes's name up there, let people know that this is something different?
It's also a meta title.
Yeah.
Because not only is it Wes Craven's new Nightmare film, but it's supposed to be about Wes Craven's new Nightmare. So it works on multiple levels. It's a great title.
Let's see. I got a little more here. There was going to be a scene with Robert Englund having a Freddy nightmare of his own. And it was going to be that he was stuck in a spider web, and then Freddy appeared as like a giant spider.
Oh, man.
And was going to come down and try to like get him.
That'd be awesome.
They thought it was a little tonally off from the rest of the film because it's kind of more of like one of his classic Freddy kills, right? Where he does like a dream kill.
Which we needed in this movie, and I will get to that too.
Yeah. But at the time they were like, well, this isn't that Freddy, so we can't really do that. I can see that.
Yeah, okay.
They had some other people they thought about for the role of Julie, the babysitter. They were thinking about Winona Ryder or Drew Barrymore. They were both considered. They both turned it down because they had other projects going on, and they just had to make a choice. And they went with the other project.
Interesting.
Apparently, Winona Ryder had auditioned to be Kristen in Dream Warriors.
Oh, wow.
And I guess either Barrymore had tried out for some stuff that Wes was doing, or he had seen her in other stuff, and then that was why he picked her for Scream for the intro.
Nice.
And this is just a final little throwback type thing. The way they kill Freddy in this film, right? He's in the furnace and they burn him alive. That's kind of a callback to his original death that led him to become this dream demon of a sorts.
Death by fire, sure.
Where the parents burned him alive. So, yeah.
All right. Okay. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think I can go first. So, this is a movie I'm very mixed on because I feel like, again, there's parts of it that are like 5-star perfect. And then there's parts that I'm just like, man, what is going on?
Yeah.
So some of the effect work at times is a little questionable. That highway scene, I love the idea of it, but I hate the way it's executed.
Yeah, anything that's not like in camera or practical effect looks kind of weak in this movie.
Yeah. I agree with you that like it's really flat visually a lot of the time. Yeah. Like the best it looks is that final climax.
Right.
And there needed to be more of that. Like, you know, it's the same thing like in the other films. They go to the boiler room a few times in the build-up. I think we needed like that. And that's really my biggest criticism on the film is like, when it's good, it is so good and it's so engaging. And this idea of like trapping a demon and a story and channeling it through Freddy, that's so cool and so high concept.
It's very smart.
I love it. And I love the way that the fiction starts to bleed into the real world and they get crisscrossed. And it's all about Heather like playing Nancy again to like retell the story one more time to like keep that cycle going, which is kind of maybe the justification in some like meta way for like why are there horror sequels? It's like the story needs to be told for a new generation.
Right. And I think also that like the movie Cabin in the Woods may have piggybacked on this a little bit.
For sure, yeah.
Which makes it even more meta because that whole movie is about pleasing horror audiences.
Right.
You know, which it could be read that this is the same way. You know,
yeah, for sure.
We have to appease this demon. Well, we also have to appease these horror fans, and we have to appease these shareholders who want more money.
Wes is just a little more subtle, I think, in his delivery.
Yes.
And then, like, so on an idea, like, you know, we're talking about movies about making movies, and I think, like, that's the crux of, like, why this film is interesting, because it's like, why make this sequel? And it's like, well, they came at it with a new angle, which is interesting and clever. And I think it's good for Wes because I think he does everything in the right way where it's very subtle and you think about it if he's not like in your face shouting it at you. But it's like, well, like, why do we tell these stories? Why does horror exist anyways? And it's like, in a way, it kind of like exercises us of our demons. That's kind of always the takeaway I have when I finish this film. Like through these stories, through experiencing them, whether you're making them and sharing them or whether you're the person consuming it and watching it and experiencing it, it's kind of like, you know, like a flood valve, and it lets shit out. It lets you process things. It's like we've talked about in the past, like it lets you think through things, process things, maybe tackle with heavier things like the death of a loved one or things like that like is hard to approach and hard to think about. But through this movie, you can engage with it in a safe way where you can like tackle that, come at it, meet it, and then at the end of the day, it's still just a movie, and you can walk away and maybe have gained something or learned something or reflected on yourself or something like that. So I think that's super cool and that's super admirable. On the other hand, I think a lot of this movie is just really fucking dull. Like it's very slow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, they repeat the same things where it's like, Heather's here, she's going here, she's going back here, she's going back here.
Right.
She's going to Dylan, she's going back to
a lot of padding.
Away from Dylan. It's a lot of padding. And I think like that's where it falters for me because like, I'll just admit this on air. When I rewatched this, I fell asleep and woke up during the credits and then had to go back and rewatch like half the movie.
If only you had a Freddy nightmare while you were asleep.
That would have made it perfect. But no, it is really dull. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a great director, so it's not like I could tell you how to fix this. But that's every time I watch it, that's my experience. I'm like, the good parts are so good, but they're broken up by these long, dull passages that they needed something else going on or more punch up more like we get all the ominous buildup, right? The earthquakes and everything else, but it's like, I don't know. To me, it's like not enough in a way almost. It's like okay, cool, but what else is going on?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And so that's always what's kind of plagued this one for me. And I see people say it's a masterpiece. I see people say it's like the best sequel. I can respect that. But for me, it just never hits that point because like there's so much that drags it down at the same time.
Yeah.
So in the end, I fall right at a 3 on this one.
A 3. Okay.
I think it's slightly better than average just because of the concept and the premise and the meta nature.
Yeah.
I give it that extra bit for Wes just because that's a brilliant stroke, and he kind of tossed it out there first in a lot of ways.
Cool. Nice. All right.
Where are you at?
Yeah, I share a lot of the same criticisms. One of my biggest problems is that it is very boring at times.
Yeah.
It's visually boring, which an Elm Street movie should not be. That was always their saving grace. They were
Right.
always kind of visually inventive. There was always something interesting happening, at least when Freddy showed up.
And that's like the Italian guys, right? Like Giallo's. How many of those are so fucking dull? But like, there's a crazy camera angle,
Yeah.
and half the screen is blue and half the screen is red, and
Right.
you're like, whoa.
There's something interesting going on
Yeah.
there. There's depth to the screen or something. And this is just that flat 90s, boring TV look. You know, oh, I can't stand it. And that's one of my biggest problems with 90s horror films. They all kind of look like this, with very few exceptions. It's... I wanted more dream type sequences. I wanted more actual kind of Freddy carnage and Freddy action.
For sure.
Again, I love that scene where like John Saxon's becoming his character and stuff.
Yes.
I would have loved more of that.
That's so endearing.
Yeah. Or even if like Robert Englund was possessed by Freddy and he like became Freddy or something. I don't know.
Or if they did the part 2 thing, but with Robert Englund, where like Freddy like spawns.
Yeah.
out of him.
That would have been fun. Maybe that would have been too far for them. I don't know. But it's also a Nightmare on Elm Street movie and it needs to go far.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. Like, you can do like the build up, but then at a point there has to be like a switch that gets flipped, and then
there's not enough nightmare in this nightmare for me. The Freddy look is problematic. I kind of like the trench coat, and I think that is partially based, as Freddy Krueger was partially based, but the trench coat kind of completes it, on an event that happened in Wes's childhood that really scared him. Do you know this story?
I do, but please share it, because if no one's ever heard this, they need to.
It's like he and his brother were young and they were home alone, and Wes is just sort of like looking out the window one night, right? And he sees this old, who he assumed to be like a homeless man, out kind of rummaging in the trash cans and stuff like that. And Wes is just sort of watching him, just looking at him from a window. And the figure's like wearing like a trench coat and like a hat too, I believe. And he kind of stopped and he just looked over directly at Wes up in his window, like he knew he was being watched. And Wes is like, oh shit, and he runs away from the window and tells his brother. They're like, there's a dude out there. And they have their lights off and they're like approaching the door of the window to look out. And suddenly it's that guy right up against the window looking in at them, like trying to scare them and stuff. And that stuck with Wes because he's like, what kind of a freak would go try to scare little kids like that,
Yeah.
So the trench coat look is cool. I'm not really a big fan of the makeup. Although the glove does look cool. The hand looks cool.
Yeah. For sure.
It reminds me actually of the original illustration on the poster, which looks nothing like in the actual movie.
That's kind of like a bony hand that still has some meat on it, and then the metal parts like grafted over top.
And it's kind of the design they would use throughout all the film posters.
Yeah.
I love the premise. It's a very smart premise. It's very innovative, but I think it kind of gets in its own way with its cleverness.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really commit. Like it can't get past its own premise in a lot of ways. Although it's a hoot seeing people playing themselves.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I love that. At the end, it just doesn't come together. It doesn't really feel like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So then what is it?
It's some weird like phantom in between place.
Yeah.
Because then if we bring Scream into the discussion, I think that's where he took this idea and like perfected it and made it lean and mean.
Right. And I will give the first, everyone knows I'm not a big Scream fan, but I will give the first movie some credit, especially those first 15 minutes, which is some of the best stuff Wes Craven's ever done. So yeah, definitely. This is definitely a dry run for Scream. Yeah, at the end of the day, this movie just doesn't work that well for me. It didn't when I first saw it. I mean, is it better than Freddy's Dead? Fuck yes. A fungal infection is better than Freddy's Dead.
I'd rather rewatch the remake than Freddy's Dead, to be honest.
Ooh, let's not go that far.
I would. I honestly, honest to God.
I don't know if I would. I can't say that. So this was better than that, but like I mentioned before, this also came out the same weekend as Pulp Fiction. So, anyway, not like it could be fairly compared to Pulp Fiction. They're two different things.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm coming down. To me, this is an average film. I'm at 2.5 stars.
So we're pretty close.
Yeah, there's a lot to like in it, but there's also, it just didn't quite. I think New Line did not want to spend the money on it and take the time it needed. They were probably pushing to get it out for that 10th anniversary, and it doesn't look as good as it could look. And that's one of my issues with Wes Craven in general. Like, the man himself, I adore him. I think he's
a genius.
Is a great guy. I think he seemed like a genuinely sweet, thoughtful, kind person. And he made some very great movies, but he also made some very bad movies. I mean, just rushed, not well thought out. I'm thinking like Deadly Friend and things like that here. You know, just things to get out to make a buck.
Oh, which here's a correction for last time. We mentioned a film that we thought was his last film last time. I forget what it was. It was
Soul to Take or something like that.
See No Evil, I think is what we said. But yeah, My Soul to Take was the one we were thinking of.
Right, yeah.
Which is also equally a bland, forgettable film.
Never saw that. I couldn't bring myself to watch it. I heard how bad it was.
I'm pretty keen on Red Eye.
You know, I never saw that either.
It's pretty good. It just got a re-release too, like a boutique
I do
Blu-ray
like
one.
Cillian Murphy. Maybe I should watch it sometime.
Yeah. Not as bad as people think it is.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, kind of an average film, but I'm glad it exists. You know, I think there's enough worthwhile to watch and enjoy it, and also to kind of see where it goes into the whole Scream franchise too, where Wes kind of took that idea.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the meta horror film perfected. Be that for good or ill, you know, it's however you feel about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think of even some of the stuff we've watched this year that we've loved. They kind of owe back,
Sure,
right here to New Nightmare.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to end on, because I don't want to end on a downer note.
No, let's not do that.
Tell me, I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Tell me,
Do I like scary movies? Yes, I do.
who's the killer in Friday the 13th?
Jason. It was Jason.
Wrong. No. What is your favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film?
Oh man.
And let's say sequel. Let's say sequel, because that's boring if we include the first one, because
Okay.
most people are going to say the first one.
Okay. That's still hard for me.
Let's eliminate that temptation.
It's still hard because I think on a technical, like real level, 3 Dream Warriors. On a like
Personal. Jason level.
on a nostalgia, fast food, MTV, part 4. It just depends which mood I'm in, you know?
Okay, we're exactly the same then, because I would say my personal favorite is Part 4, The Dream Master.
Yeah.
Love it. Love everything about it. Especially Lisa Wilcox.
You have no idea how many times I saw that movie as a teenager.
If I was going to say what I think is objectively the best sequel, probably Dream Master, the third one. Yeah, I think that's like the best made one. But
Dream Warriors, third one.
Oh yeah, Dream Warriors. Yeah. I subconsciously said Dream Master.
You're going back to Dream Master.
I want to say
and part 3 is where Freddy really became a pop culture phenomena.
Yeah, that's where it was the iconic.
And it's that line. It's that one line that really cemented it. Welcome to primetime, bitch. That is the moment that Freddy became a pop culture icon.
And look where we are now, where you have stuff like Rick and Morty, and they do like Scary Terry, the parody.
God sure says bitch a lot.
I will say though, I do think Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, I think there's a lot to love there that gets overlooked.
I recently rewatched that, and yeah, the last 15 minutes are kind of a slog. It needed a bit punchier ending. Although the very, very end on the bus is cool.
Yeah. Oh man, love that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's an underappreciated. I think it's getting reevaluated.
Yeah,
lately.
it is, especially with that documentary too that came out about it.
Right,
which is excellent too if you want some companion stuff.
Scream
to watch.
Queen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very good.
Very good. There's no way I believe the director had no clue what was going on there, because.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty. I can see general audiences not.
Yeah,
but like the screenwriter definitely knew, and the lead, because he himself was gay. At the time,
he got it.
He got it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one. The other question is, what is your favorite Wes Craven film?
Wow.
And again, as you said, it's quite varied that you can go with.
It is. I mean, I want to say Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay.
But I also think that I mean, his early films had such an effect. They were so much more drive-in 70s.
Talking about Last House on the Left or like The Hills Have Eyes.
Exactly.
Both iconic.
Exactly. Those also have kind of a lasting legacy, you know.
A lot of the stuff he's made, really, like other films, owe a ton back to him.
Yeah. And those are by no means his technically best films.
No.
But man, they stick with you. Especially Last House on the Left. You know.
For sure.
But I think overall I would have to say Elm Street is his masterpiece.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you a weird swing. I think my favorite is 1988, The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Wow, okay.
Which is a very weird, kind of based on it's actually like a nonfiction book, right? About like Haiti and the actual original,
Wade Davis, I think
yeah.
was anthropologist.
About like the whole like zombie phenomenon and stuff. Really well done film, really haunting. I like the way that it mixes like actual historical stuff in with this like scary story at the core.
Yeah. Bill Pullman, he's very likable in it. Yeah, that was a fun movie. I hadn't seen that in ages either.
I feel like it goes forgotten, and I picked it up on the Blu-ray, and man, just, so good.
I'll have to go watch it sometime.
Worth the watch, but tense up there at the one scene.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I remember that.
That'll stick with you for a while.
Yes, it will.
Well, that brings us to the end of both this episode, this block, and this year. This is our last episode for the year. Been a wild one.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll get wilder next year, too.
I hope so.
The next time you get back with us, we will be talking about a listener episode, because that's how we do things, and that's what's going to spill into the next year.
Yep.
And we are going to be going a wild departure from what we've been on. Staying in the 90s, though. I'm going to slide it back a little bit to 91, and we are going to check out, directed by Terry Gilliam, which I think is the first time we're ever going to talk about that, too.
Strangely enough, yes.
The Fisher King.
Robin Williams. Oh my God, who else is in that?
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, that's right.
Yeah.
The dude himself.
The dude.
Well, we haven't had a Robin Williams movie either.
No, yeah, it's going to be a bunch of firsts that we're checking off. Yeah. This came to us from my friend Daniel, who took me to my first drive-in experience, so thank you, man, for this. I've never seen it. I knew it was going to come up, so I went ahead and blind bought it in the Criterion sale.
Ooh.
So
okay. I have seen this. I saw it when it came out, so I saw everything back then. And I'll go ahead and give you this little bit that it did stick with me. There's a couple of scenes that really affected me for a while.
Interesting.
And Terry Gilliam tends to do that, even with his more fun stuff. There's things that always kind of stick with you.
Oh yeah.
So we'll explore that and talk all about that next time.
In the new year.
That's right.
Otherwise, we'll probably drop a little bonus episode at the end of the year like we tend to do. Nothing special, a little short thing, just recapping the year like you do. But otherwise, we'll see everyone in the new year to check out a listener film and start us off right. And then we'll talk about where we're going from there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, keep sending us listener episodes. You can hit us up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Email us at genreexposure@gmail.com. Tell us what you've been watching, what you think is cool. I know in that little recap episode, we're probably going to talk about film discovery. So let us know films that you've watched this year for the first time, new or old.
There you go.
That you think are pretty groovy.
Something we should check out.
Something you were digging.
Yeah.
Maybe something we've missed we need to circle back for and check out ourselves.
Yeah, and what's your favorite Wes Craven movie?
Yes.
What's your least favorite Wes Craven movie?
And who wants to come to my TED Talk about why Cursed isn't that bad? But it's still pretty bad. I'm honest. I'm not going to swing that hard for it. So
No. Even Christina Ricci can't save that.
She can say it a lot, though. And that's how we're going to end this year. So lots of love for Christina Ricci here at Genre Exposure.
That's right.
And all that being said, we'll see you next year.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.